In April 1969, the 25th Infantry Division built a fire base 14 kilometers from the nearest friendly base, 10 kilometers from the Cambodian border, and placed it directly on a known NVA infiltration route. They seeded the dirt with seismic sensors the enemy did not know existed. They mounted ground surveillance radar on a 20-foot tower flown in by Chinook. They bulldozed the surrounding terrain into a kill zone, concentric rings of open ground at exactly the ranges where every howitzer, every claymore, and every machine gun was pre-registered to fire. Then they put a single rifle company inside and waited. 2 NVA regiments saw exactly what the Americans wanted them to see: an isolated, undersized garrison, an easy target. By that math, 400 men died. 1 American. Tay Ninh Province, mid-1969. 10 kilometers from the Cambodian border, close enough to hear the war, cross back and forth. To the east, triple canopy jungle, War Zone C, one of the most dangerous pieces of real estate in South Vietnam. To the west, abandoned rice paddies stretching toward Cambodia. North Vietnamese Army regiments used this corridor the way commuters use a highway. War Zone C to the Cambodian sanctuaries and back again, carrying weapons, replacements, and attack orders from the Central Office for South Vietnam. The border was a one-way valve. The enemy could cross it. American ground forces could not. The problem was not finding the North Vietnamese Army. Everyone knew where they were. The problem was that every fire base placed near that border became a target, and the tools designed to save those fire bases were failing. At Firebase Caisson 6 in October 1967, the 1st Infantry Division fired Beehive rounds into a North Vietnamese Army assault. Beehive, a howitzer shell packed with thousands of steel flechettes, was designed to turn a cannon into a giant shotgun. It was supposed to be the answer to human wave attacks. The North Vietnamese soldiers crawled. Thousands of darts fired in a horizontal fan passed over men on their stomachs. The round designed to stop a charge was defeated by men who refused to stand up. Major General Ellis W. Williamson, commanding the 25th Infantry Division. The Tropic Lightning studied that failure. He studied every fire base that had been overrun or nearly overrun since the war began. Insufficient early warning, inadequate construction, fire support too slow to respond. The same mistakes repeated. Williamson's division did not build another fire base. They built a trap. The Army had a name for the concept, the Offensive Fire Support Base. Firebase Crook was its purest expression. Construction began in April 1969, 14 kilometers northwest of Tay Ninh City. An engineer drove a stake into the center of the planned base. A 40-meter rope was stretched from that stake as a radius. An aiming circle was set at center, and stakes were driven every 15 degrees around the perimeter, 24 positions. The ideal number of fighting bunkers for a rifle company. At each position, a helicopter dropped a standard package. 1 15-pound shaped demolition charge, 2 sheets of pierced steel planking, and a bundle of sandbags. The shaped charges blew the initial craters. The steel and sandbags went up as 9-foot bunkers. Bulldozers pushed berms between positions and dug command bunkers inside the perimeter. A CH-47 Chinook flew in a fully assembled 20-foot observation tower in a single lift. By nightfall of the first day, Bravo Company, 3rd Battalion, 22nd Infantry, the Regulars, was dug in with complete overhead cover. 6 105mm howitzers from Battery A, 7th Battalion, 11th Field Artillery, sat inside the wire. The base looked like every other fire base in Vietnam. It was nothing like every other fire base in Vietnam. Buried in the dirt around the perimeter were sensors, devices originally deployed along the McNamara line at the DMZ, capable of detecting human footsteps within 40 meters. The North Vietnamese Army knew about the DMZ sensors. They did not know the technology had been moved to a fire base in Tay Ninh. Mounted on the observation tower, the ANPPS-5 ground surveillance radar scanned the surrounding tree lines out to 5 kilometers, ranges the human eye could not reach, even in daylight. At night, starlight scopes turned ambient moonlight into a green-lit picture of every trail and woodline within range. The Americans could see in the dark. The North Vietnamese Army could not. The terrain itself was part of the weapon. Bulldozers had cut concentric rings into the earth at 150 meters and 300 meters out, clearings that looked like racetracks from the air. They denied rocket-propelled grenade gunners their ideal firing ranges, and gave aerial observers a built-in ruler for calling fire. Between the bunker line and those clearings, claymore mines laced every approach. Scattered among the stripped terrain, Isolated patches of vegetation were deliberately left standing, positioned precisely where radar coverage overlapped them, with 105mm direct fire pre-registered to destroy anyone who used them for concealment. The cover was a lie. The terrain was a kill zone disguised as an opportunity. The man who would command this machine when it mattered was Major Joseph E. Hacia of Wethersfield, Connecticut, Executive Officer, 3rd Battalion, 22nd Infantry. Hacia knew the sensors, knew the fire plans, and knew the pre-registered artillery fans, covering every meter of approach. What he could not know was whether the enemy would take the bait, or how many would come if they did. On the night of June 5th, his sensors would answer the first question. They would not answer the second. Whether to trust the technology to bet a rifle company's survival on vibrations in the dirt and blips on a radar screen would be Hacia's decision alone. Evening, June 5th, 1969. The seismic sensors picked up heavy movement less than 1 kilometer to the northwest. Ground surveillance radar confirmed it. 3 to 5 man teams moving in the woodlines. Reconnaissance parties. Hacia ordered interdicting artillery on trails, road junctions, and likely assembly areas. The movement continued. He did not wait for certainty. He ordered 100% alert. Every man on Firebase Crook was awake and in his fighting position. The sensors were right. At 02:55 hours on June 6th, the base disappeared under a coordinated barrage. 107mm rockets, 122mm rockets, 75mm recoilless rifle fire, RPGS, 60mm and 82mm mortars. Most of the rockets overshot, a common problem with the notoriously inaccurate 107mm and 122mm systems. The mortars did not miss. Rounds hit inside the perimeter. 1 American soldier was killed. He would be the only American to die in 3 nights of fighting. The 272nd Viet Cong and North Vietnamese Army Regiment launched a battalion-sized ground assault from the south and west. Battery A opened up with the technique that defined Firebase Crook, Killer Jr. The gunners of Captain Dick Neal's battery out of San Antonio, Texas, cranked their 105mm howitzers level and fired time-fused, high-explosive rounds set to burst 30 feet above the ground at ranges of 150 to 200 meters. Not impact detonation, but airburst. A curtain of shrapnel rained straight down onto attackers who could not escape it by going prone. The crawling that had defeated Beehive at Quezon 6 was meaningless against a round that exploded above your head. A 16-man North Vietnamese Army sapper team breached the outer wire with Bangalore torpedoes, the sharp crack of the charges blowing lanes through the concertina. All 16 died inside the wire. Claymores and rifle fire from the bunker line killed every one of them. The bunker line was never penetrated. Captain Neal later said his men fired the guns point blank into the charging North Vietnamese army while rockets and mortars hit their own positions. They got out of their bunkers and fired the guns. They knew they had to do it, so they stayed low, and we came out like bandits, taking very few casualties. By 0400 hours, the full weight of American AIR support arrived. AC-47 Spooky, AC-119 Shadow, Cobra gunships, and tactical air. By 0530 hours, the surviving North Vietnamese army withdrew into the jungle. That morning, Bravo Company moved outside the wire to sweep. They got 30 meters before North Vietnamese Army soldiers in spider holes started throwing grenades. Bravo pulled back. Spooky hosed down the area with miniguns. When the sweep resumed, 76 enemy bodies and 15 weapons were found. That was night 1. Night 2 was worse for the North Vietnamese Army. The evening of June 6th, the sensors and radar detected heavy movement again, this time to the northwest and east. A different direction, a different regiment. The 88th Regiment of the North Vietnamese Army descended from the 308th Capital Division, one of the original Viet Minh formations that had fought the French at Dien Bien Phu. 430 men. This was coordination above regimental level. COSVN, the Central Office for South Vietnam, had sent a fresh regiment to finish what the 272nd had failed to do. Shortly after 2 in the morning, simultaneous battalion-sized assaults hit from the northeast and northwest. The Northwestern Battalion breached the outer wire. The northeastern assault was stopped short, and then the trap closed again. Specialist 4 Thomas Bellin of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, was one of the first to spot sappers crawling under the wire on the southwest side. Bellin opened up with his M60 and did not stop. He burned through the barrel with sustained fire. Sergeant First Class Donald Neal of Columbus, Georgia, grabbed 2 M79 grenade launchers and several bandoliers of 40mm ammunition, ran to Bellin's position, and began putting grenades into the sapper teams one round after another, driving them back toward the wood line. On the opposite side of the perimeter, Specialist 4 Richard C. Marroquin of Floresville, Texas, identified the NVA shifting their effort to the northeast sector, the side where the initial assault had been lighter. Marroquin turned his M60 on the onrushing enemy and killed 12 NVA soldiers in front of his position. He said later that he saw them coming. The place was lit up like the 4th of July, and we could spot our targets as they came out of the wood line. The concentric clearings, the racetracks, were doing exactly what they were designed to do. The NVA were crossing open ground at precisely the ranges where every weapon on the firebase was pre-registered. The terrain had been engineered to kill them. They were dying on ground that had been shaped for that purpose before they ever set foot on it. Above it all, Major John R. Bode, United States Air Force out of Omaha, Nebraska, forward air controller and air liaison officer with the 1st Brigade, flew 6 missions totaling more than 17 hours at treetop level under ceilings of less than 1,000 feet, coordinating Spooky, Shadow, Cobras, and tactical fighters simultaneously while under sustained ground fire. He would receive the Air Force Cross. By morning, 323 enemy bodies, 10 prisoners, over 40 weapons recovered. 0 Americans killed on night 2. The units that attacked Firebase Crook were not second-rate formations. The 272nd Regiment had fought at Prek Clock 2, Soy Tre, Firebase Burt, and through both the Tet Offensive and the May Offensive of 1968, a documented pattern of being thrown against American positions and suffering catastrophic losses, rebuilt each time with replacements walked down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The 88th carried lineage from Dien Bien Phu. These were among the most experienced regiments the NVA had in the South. Night 3 told the story of what was left. Light small arms fire, a weak ground probe, no serious assault. The Center of Military History called it a parting gesture from the badly beaten 272nd Regiment. 2 regiments effectively destroyed as fighting formations. The NVA had planned for aerial intervention. An estimated 15 DSHK heavy machine guns were deployed around the firebase to counter the gunships they knew would come. They anticipated the American response. They simply could not match the volume of what arrived. But the math was not perfect. The 1 American killed died during the initial mortar barrage on night 1, before the ground assault, before the sensors could matter. Sensors detect movement. They cannot stop a round already in the air. Preparation did not make Firebase Crook invulnerable. It made it survivable. The spider holes proved the same point from a different angle. NVA survivors, hidden in camouflage positions with grenades, waited for the morning sweep. Even a 400-to-1 victory does not clear every fighter from the surrounding terrain, and the retreating NVA withdrew toward the Cambodian border, where American ground forces could not follow. Artillery and airstrikes pounded the withdrawal routes. The survivors made it across. That was the fundamental limitation of every border firebase. Tactical victories, no matter how lopsided, could not become strategic results when the enemy had sanctuary 10 kilometers away. Veteran Dave Famweiss of Echo Company, 4.2-inch mortar platoon, 3rd Battalion, 22nd Infantry, said that they fired everything they had. High explosive, Willie Pete, and illumination those 3 nights, and that they were never mentioned in any account of the fight. They are mentioned now. The United States Army Center of Military History cited Firebase Crook as the definitive example of the offensive fire support base. The integration of sensors, pre-registered fires, terrain engineering, and the killer junior technique that turned a defensive position into a weapon. The concept influenced later base designs, including Fire Support Base Floyd in August 1970, the 3rd Battalion, 22nd Infantry, the Regulars. The regimental motto traces to the War of 1812, the Battle of Chippewa. British Major General Phineas Riel, expecting to face militia, watched the 22nd Infantry advance through artillery and musket fire with parade ground precision, and he corrected himself, saying, "Those are regulars, by God." At Firebase Crook, 155 years later, the name still fit. 400-to-1. For comparison, Firebase Burt had 382 enemy killed against 23 Americans dead. Firebase Illingworth was 88-25. Firebase Marianne was 15-33. Crook stands without parallel in the history of Firebase defense. The site has reverted to farmland. The bunkers, the wire, the observation tower, the concentric clearings cut into the earth like racetracks were absorbed back into the Vietnamese landscape. The flat terrain northwest of Tay Ninh that once hosted the most lopsided fire-based defense of the war is now under cultivation. Captain Larry B. Thomas of Camp Hill, Pennsylvania, Bravo Company commander, said it plainest. He said they were all heroes. The men knew what to do before I had a chance to direct them. They performed beyond expectations. The regulars did not need anyone to explain what they did. The math speaks for itself.